As we continue with life issues, we'll talk about abortion. Some key terms to remember. Abortion is the deliberate or induced termination of a pregnancy by surgical or medical means. A therapeutic abortion is an abortion performed to protect the life or the health of the mother. Conception is the merging of a sperm cell and an ovum or an egg into a single cell. It's also called fertilization. Viability is the stage of fetal development at which point the fetus is able to survive outside the uterus. That's usually around 24 to 28 months. Those are going to be important terms as we discuss the topic. The moral question is abortion right? Is it morally acceptable? The foundation of the abortion argument, whether people realize it or not, is the question of when life begins. Essentially, any rational person would agree that it is morally unacceptable to kill an innocent life, to take an innocent life. So that brings us to the question as, well, when does life actually begin? So that brings us to the question of, well, when does life actually begin? When I ask students in the classroom this question, I consistently get the same answers. And here's what I usually get. Conception, brain activity, heartbeat, viability, and birth. I just defined conception and viability for you. The brain, the nerves, and heart begin development in the 5th week of pregnancy. That's according to the United States Library of Medicine. In weeks 6 and 7, the heart begins to beat with regular rhythm, and the brain has expanded into about 5 different significant areas. If you don't know what birth is, ask your mother. A student once tried to argue that life begins when you get a Social Security number. Now, the class easily debunked this argument by saying that by this logic that anyone who is not a United States citizen then is not alive because they don't have Social Security numbers, and that by that logic it would be completely morally acceptable to murder a newborn baby anytime before they get their Social Security number issued. So we ruled that one out pretty quickly. We've also managed to usually rule out the fact that life begins at birth, and we do that with what's called the stillbirth argument. The definition of a stillbirth is the birth of a child which is dead. Well, in order for a child to be dead, it has to have been alive. So if it is dead at birth, then logically, it was alive before birth. Therefore, life begins sometime before birth. Okay, we've narrowed it down. Life begins sometime before birth. We're not exactly sure when. There are scientific studies that can tell us that it begins at conception, or brain activity, or heartbeat, or viability. And that's where the challenge is. There are a lot of arguments for and against abortion. The reality is, if we know exactly when life begins, that can end the argument. Because no rational person would want to terminate or destroy an innocent life. We just don't know when that innocent life actually happens, according to medical science. Arguments supporting abortion, the primary one is the woman's right to choose. That argument asserts that a woman has the right to choose what she does with her own body and that no person or entity can infringe upon that right. There is the resource and stability argument. That argument says that it is morally acceptable for a woman to seek an abortion if she has an unstable situation, financial or otherwise, that would result in a seriously negative environment for the child. Rape and incest. In this scenario, the argument asserts that if a woman becomes pregnant against her will, she should not be forced by any person or entity to carry to term a child that was conceived against her will. Some arguments that oppose abortion. Well, there's the life argument. This argument is central to the opposition of abortion. Regardless of circumstance, this position asserts that the taking of an innocent life is morally wrong and that an unborn child is innocent life. There's the father argument. Positions supporting abortion generally consider the mother's point of view as she is the one who will carry the child. The father argument asserts that both parents should have input into the ultimate fate of the child. And there's the adoption argument. As an alternative to abortion, this position presents offering an unwanted child for adoption. It's a direct counter to the resource and stability argument. If someone doesn't have the financial means to raise a child, adoption is presented as an alternative. From a religious point of view, most Christianity, and particularly Roman Catholicism, teach that life begins at conception. Islam teaches that life begins approximately 8 weeks into the pregnancy when an angel infuses a soul into the fetus. So we have some religious guidelines as to where life begins. From a scientific standpoint, as I said, we have guidelines all over the map. So it becomes a matter of personal belief as to when that life begins that help guide us as to when, if at all, abortion is morally acceptable. I heard a story presented to me once that is worth repeating. A person asks you to help them move, and when you arrive to help, they present you with a challenge. Everything is packed and ready to go. Problem is, they have to be out of their apartment in 30 minutes. The truck is there, and in one of the boxes that's already packed is an extremely old, antique, precious, valuable ceramic tea kettle. Problem is, they don't remember which box it's in. How do you proceed? Most people say, well, there's no time to go through all the boxes. So we proceed very carefully and assume that every one of those boxes is precious. It's erring on the side of caution. So if we're not exactly sure when life begins, maybe erring on the side of caution is an option. It's something to think about.